So now this is the now moving on to the next slide. So I've come out from the basic three categories of lymphoid, secondary lymphoid tissues I showed you, and now we are coming to this picture. You look into this picture, you can see that these are the general pattern recognition receptors. Now the pattern recognition molecules can be membrane bound receptors. As you can see, they can be membrane bound receptors, soluble proteins. As you can see, these are soluble proteins. Now, soluble proteins that binds to structures found on a variety of pathogens. In case of pattern recognition receptors, the binding of pathogen initiates the internalization and destruction of the invader. So if it's a receptor bound PRR, pattern recognition receptor, the binding of the pathogen initiates internalization and destruction of the invader. In contrast, for soluble pattern recognition molecules, they mainly activate the complement system and serve as a opsonine for phagocytosis. Now, given the host of pattern recognition molecules observed, we have the toll-like receptors found on the plasma membrane, TLR1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and on the endosomal membrane, TLR3, 7, 8, 9. We have the NLRs. They are present in the cytoplasm, NLRP1, 3, 4. We have the NOD, NOD1, NOD2. We have the CLRs. They are present on the plasma membrane. We have the scavenger receptors present on the plasma membrane. We have the NK receptors. They also fall under the pattern recognition receptors. Present on the plasma membrane, we have the NK T cell receptor. Present on the plasma membrane, we have the gamma delta T cell receptor. Present on the plasma membrane, and we have a collection of small soluble proteins known as collectins. They are present in the blood plasma. So these are the host of pattern recognition receptors found within the cell, and as you know that these PRRs actually recognize molecular patterns on the microbes, and accordingly they function. So pattern recognition receptor molecule, which is a pattern recognition receptor acting on a membrane, functions in one way, and a soluble pattern recognition receptor acts in another way. So these are the basic things about the pattern recognition receptor. Now coming to pathogen associated molecular patterns. Now what does this do? They actually recognize the pathogen associated molecular patterns. So they may be the bacterial LPS, peptidoglycan fragments, mannose containing carbohydrates. We have viral products like double-stranded RNA and single-stranded RNA. We may have fungal products like chitin. We may have parasitic products like Plasmodium humozoin. And apart from that, there is another category of molecular patterns which is known as damage-associated molecular patterns. That includes the reactive oxygen intermediates, hydrogen peroxide, stress molecules like chaperone proteins, heat shock proteins. Mind it, these stress molecules are recognized by the gamma delta T cells. Okay. Then we have metabolic products like uric acid, cholesterol, and we have exogenous substances like alum, silica, asbestos. In fact, the complement products C3b, C4b, these also fall under the damage associated molecular patterns. Now coming to the structure of, I just wanted to show you the structure for bone marrow from this book. You can look here that this is the bone marrow. This is the red marrow part, the mesh-like network. This is the red marrow part, and we have sinus venosus here. These are the nutrient artery. The red marrow part is shown here in a greater detail. So I'm not getting into the details of the bone marrow because I think so we have done this structure earlier. So I'm moving on to my next slide. Now coming to the division of labor. Now if you look into the division of labor between the B and the T lymphocytes. So this is the extracellular antigens. The extracellular antigens can be parasites, fungi, bacterial toxin, extracellular bacteria. And these are the intracellular bacteria, virus, viral proteins. Now the lymphocyte subsets have unique effector functions that are suited according to the different pathogens. Helper T cells act indirectly to read the body of both extracellular and intracellular threats by secreting sets of cytokine. So you remember in the first slide I had showed you that this acts as a pivotal molecule depending on what pathogenic information it is getting. So if it's an extracellular pathogenic information, it goes on to activate the B lymphocytes. If it's an intracellular pathogenic information, it goes on to activate the cytotoxic T lymphocytes. So this is a very basic division of labor. And once a B lymphocyte is activated, they go on to make antibodies. And once a T cytotoxic cell is activated, it moves forward to access of the target cells. Now this picture is actually showing the antigenic epitopes. Now the surface of a pathogen can be studied with many antigenic macromolecules composed of small regions of antigenicity called epitopes. Okay, so epitopes may be a particular macromolecule or may be shared by other macromolecules on the pathogen surface. The B cell receptor can bind to, as you can see, the B cell receptor can bind to epitopes that are part of macromolecules on the pathogen surface, as well as two epitopes that are part of soluble fragments. So you can see it can bind to the pathogen macromolecules or it can bind to fragments. So these are the various kind of epitopes to which the B cell receptor can bind. Now, this is a basic mechanism of action of the T lymphocytes. The action of the T lymphocytes, we all know, I think so you are very thorough with the fact that the T helper and the T cytotoxic cells recognize antigenic peptides when they're complexed with the MHC molecules. The MHC molecules, so antigen presenting cells, this is a picture, the antigen presenting cells only present the MHC, both the MHC class 1 and the class 2 molecules. So a T helper cell can recognize an antigen when complexed with MHC class 2 molecules. Look at the structure of the antigen. If you remember the class of MHC, it's an open group. MHC class 2 is open group and the antigen ends hang out from the group. So that is how the picture has been depicted. And if you look into the MHC class 1 structure, you can see it's a closed groove. And the T cytotoxic cells recognizes the antigen complexed with the MHC class 1 molecule. And MHC class 1 molecule is present on the surface of all nucleated cells. MHC class 2 molecule is present in the surface of all professional antigen presenting cells. Mind it, all the professional antigen presenting cells also have the MHC class 1 molecule. And we know that the MHC class 1 molecule is highly polymorphic. This picture depicts the polymorphism of the MHC class 1 molecule. It is highly polymorphic. Just remember that although only one peptide binds to the MHC molecule at any given time, the peptide binding group encoded by each MHC class 1 or class 2 allele is designated to accommodate a wide variety of peptides. This type of binding is called promiscuous and is exhibited by the proteins encoded by all MHC molecules, because the MHC molecules are not specific to a particular amino acid. They are specific to the length of the amino acid and they're specific to their certain anchor residues. So they can bind to a variety of peptides. Hence, the binding is known as promiscuous. This is a basic structure of a antigen presentation. If you remember the classes of antigen presentation, cells are infected with, in this case, the cells are infected with virus A. They produce endogenous viral peptides, as you can see, which associate with MHC class 1 in the endoplasmic reticulum. The class 1 viral peptide complex is transported through the ER and are released through the ER and are released into the Golgi, which is transported to the cell surface and presented to the CD8 positive T cytotoxic cells. And this is the structure of the exogenous antigens. And if you look, the exogenous antigens are phagocytosed into the cell, and upon entering the endocytic pathway, the antigens are broken by acidic granules in endosomes and lysosomes. So the antigens are broken here. Meanwhile, MHC class II molecules are synthesized in the endoplasmic reticulum and then processed through the Golgi apparatus. Peptides associate with the MHC class II molecules and the two are transported to the cell surface. So this is a very brief summary I gave because I have went into details regarding how this process occurs in individual classes. So now moving into my next part. So these are the receptors and the epitopes, and you can see the similarity. I had said that the receptors belong to almost the same family, so they have a very similar immunoglobulin-like domains. So these are the similarity in the receptors that we observed in the cells of the innate immunity, in the cells of the adaptive immunity. So these are the receptors. This is the four basic kind of interaction that is observed between a antigen and an antibody. So these are the four standard basic kind of interactions observed between a antigen and antibody reaction. And the last picture, this is a picture, analytical picture. I wanted to show this picture. We know that a native protein might exist in a native protein always exists in a three-dimensional conformation. Now, if you remember my antigen class, I had said you that there are antigens which are linear, which exhibits linear epitopes, and there are antigens which exhibits conformational epitope. Now, if we look here, this is a conformational determinant. The word determine means it's an epitope, okay, so which will be determining a specific immune response when antibody recognizes it. So if it's a conformational determinant, you look, the antibody binds with the conformational determinant. But when native protein, which having a conformational determinant, if they are denatured, the determinant is lost. So after denaturation, no binding is observed. If we look into a linear determinant, so you can see the antibody is binding, and on protein denaturation, the antigen can still bind with the antibody. So that's a very basic difference. I mean, this is structural, not structural, I'd say analytical difference between a conformational determinant and a linear determinant. For a linear determinant, the denaturation will not spoil the antibody binding property of the antigen. So for a conformational determinant, on denaturation, antibody cannot bind. For a linear determinant, these both are linear determinants. On antibody denaturation, the antibody can bind with the antigen. So this is a very analytical difference between a conformational determinant and a linear determinant. So with this, I stop my class.